Exodus 9, the plague on livestock. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says: Let my people go, so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go and continue to hold them back, the hand of the Lord will bring a terrible plague on your livestock in the field, on your horses, donkeys, camel, and on your cattle, sheep, and goats. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and that of Egypt.'" Classic. "So no animal belonging to the Israelites will die." Whoa. The Lord set a time and said, "Tomorrow the Lord will do this in the land." And the next day the Lord did it. And the next day the Lord did it. All the livestock of the Egyptians died, but not one animal belonging to the Israelites died. Pharaoh investigated and found that not even one of the animals of the Israelites had died. Yet his heart was unyielding and would not let the people go. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Take handfuls of soot from the furnace, and have Moses toss it into the air in the presence of Pharaoh. It will become fine dust over the whole land of Egypt. Festering boils will break out on the people and the animals throughout the land." I thought all the animals just died, but I guess it must be the Israelite animals too. I get no livestock died. All the animals also got. What? Forget I said anything. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils that were put on them and the Egyptians. Lol. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not listen to Moses and Aaron, just as the Lord had said to Moses. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Get up early in the morning, confront Pharaoh, and say to him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says: Let my people go, so that they may worship me, or this time I will send a full force of my plagues against you, and against your officials and your people, so you may know that there is no one like me in all the earth. For now I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with a plague that would wipe you off the earth. But I have raised you up for this very purpose, that I may show you my power, and that my name might be proclaimed in the earth.' You still set yourself against my people, and will not let them go. Therefore, at this time tomorrow, I will send the worst hailstorm that has ever fallen on Egypt, from the day it was founded till now. Give an order now to bring your livestock and everything you have in the field to a place of shelter, because the hail will fall on every person and animal that has not been brought in, and that is still out in the field. They will die." Those officials of Pharaoh who feared the word of the Lord hurried and brought their slaves and their livestock inside. But those who ignored the word of the Lord let their slaves and livestock out in the field. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand towards the sky, so that hail will fall all over Egypt, on people and animals, and on everything growing in the fields of Egypt." When Moses stretched out his staff towards the sky, the Lord said thunder and hail and lightning flashed down to the ground. So the Lord rained hail down on the land of Egypt. Hail fell and lightning flashed back and forth. It was the worst storm in all the land of Egypt since it had become a nation. Throughout Egypt, hail struck everything in the fields, both people and animals. It beat down everything that was growing in the fields and stripped every tree. The only place it did not hail was the land of Goshen, where the Israelites were. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron. "This time I have sinned," he said to them. "The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Pray to the Lord so that we have had enough thunder and hail, and I will let you go. You don't have to stay any longer." Moses replied, "When I have gone out of the city, I will spread out my hands in the prayer of the Lord. The thunder will stop, and there will be no more hail, so that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. But I know that you and your officials still do not fear the Lord God." The flax and barley were destroyed, since the barley had headed and the flax was in bloom. The wheat and spelt, however, were not destroyed because they were ripened later. Interesting little fact. Then Moses left Pharaoh and went out to the city. He spread out his hands toward the Lord. The thunder and hail stopped, and the rain no longer poured down on the land. When Pharaoh saw that the rain and hail and thunder had stopped, he sinned again. He and his officials hardened their hearts. So Pharaoh's heart was hard and would not let the Israelites go, just as the Lord had said through Moses. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his officials, so that I may perform these signs among them, that you may tell your children and your grandchildren now, how I dealt harshly with the Egyptians, and how I performed my signs among them, and that you may know that I am the Lord." So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, "This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will bring locusts into your country tomorrow. They will cover the face and the ground of the ground so that it cannot be seen. They will devour what little you have left after the hail, including every tree that is grown in your fields. They will fill your houses and those of the officials and all the Egyptians, something neither your parents nor your ancestors have ever seen from the day they settled in this land till now." Then Moses turned and left Pharaoh. Pharaoh's officials said to him, "How long will this man be a snare to us? Let the people go so that they may worship the Lord their God. Do you not realize that Egypt is ruined?" Then Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh. "Go, worship the Lord your God," he said. "But tell me who will be going." Moses answered, "We will go with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and herds, because we are to celebrate this festival of the Lord." Pharaoh said, "The people, the the Lord be with you. If I let you go along with your women and children, clearly you are bent on evil." "No, I have not. I have only the men and work and no, only the men go and worship the Lord, since that's what you have been asking for." Then Moses and Aaron were driven out of Pharaoh's presence. And the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch your hand over the whole land of Egypt, so that locust swarms over the land and devours everything growing in the fields, everything left by the hail." So Moses stretched his staff over Egypt, and the Lord made the east wind blow across the land that day and all night. By the morning the wind had brought the locusts. They invaded Egypt and settled down in every area of the country in great numbers. Never before was there ever such a plague of locusts, nor will there ever be again. They covered all the ground until it was black, devouring everything that was left after the hail, everything growing in the fields and the fruit on the trees. Nothing green remained on the tree or in a plant of all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh quickly summoned Moses, and Aaron said, "I have sinned against the Lord and against God and you. Now forgive my sins once more, and pray to the Lord your God to make this deadly plague away from me." Joseph then left Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord changed the wind and the very strong west wind, which caught up the locusts and carried them into the Red Sea. Not a locust was left anywhere in Egypt, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go. The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand towards the sky so darkness spreads over Egypt, darkness that can be felt." So Moses stretched all his hand towards the sky. Total darkness covered Egypt for all 3 days. No one could see anything else or move about for 3 days. Yet all of Israel had light in the places where they lived. Then Pharaoh summoned Moses and said, "Go worship your God. Even your women and children may go with you. Only leave behind your flocks and herds." But Moses said, "You must allow us to have sacrifices and burnt offerings presented to the Lord. Our livestock must go with us too. Not a hoof is to be left behind. We have some use for them in worshiping the Lord our God. Until we get there, we will not know what to use to worship the Lord." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he was not willing to let them go. Pharaoh said to Moses, "Get out of my sight. Make sure you do not appear before me again. The day you see my face, you will die." "Just as you say," Moses replied. "I will never reappear before you again." Now the Lord said to Moses, "I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that, he will let you go from here. And when he does, he will drive you out completely. Tell the people that the men and women alike are to ask their neighbors for articles of silver and gold." The Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and Moses himself was highly regarded in Egypt by Pharaoh's officials and by his people. So Moses said, "This is what the Lord says. About midnight I will go throughout Egypt. Every firstborn son in Egypt will die, from the firstborn son of Pharaoh, who sits on the throne, to the firstborn son of the female slave, who is at her hand mill, and all the firstborn of the cattle as well. There will be a loud wailing throughout Egypt, worse than there has ever been or ever will be. But among the Israelites, not a dog will bark at any person or animal. Then you will know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. All these officials of yours will come to me, bowing down before me and saying, Go, you, your people who follow you. After that, I will leave. Then Moses, hot with anger, left Pharaoh. The Lord had said to Moses, Pharaoh will refuse to listen to you, so that my wonders may be multiplied in Egypt. Moses and Aaron performed all these wonders before Pharaoh, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go out of his country. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, This month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for one lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people you are there. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed to accordance with what each person will eat. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defects, and you may take them from the sheep or goats. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and tops of the door frames of the house, making the symbol of life. So cool. That same night, they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs, and bread made without yeast. Do not eat the meat raw or boiled in water, but roasted over a fire with the head, legs, and internal organs. Do not leave any of it till morning. If some is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat it. With the cloak tucked into your belts, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, eat it in haste, for it is the Lord's Passover. On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign on your house where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is the day you are commemorating. For generations to come you shall celebrate as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. For 7 days you are to eat bread without yeast. On the first day remove the yeast from your house. For anyone who eats anything with yeast in it from the first day through to the 7th day must be cut off from Israel. On the first day a sacred assembly, and another on the 7th day. Do not work at all on these days, except to prepare food for everyone to eat. That is all you may do. Celebrate the festival of the unleavened bread, because it is the very day that I brought your divisions out of Egypt. Celebrate this day as a lasting ordinance for generations to come. In the first month you are to eat bread made without yeast, from evening to the 14th day until the evening of the 21st day. For 7 days no yeast will be found in your houses, and anyone, whether foreign or native born, who eats anything with yeast in it must be cut off from the community of Israel. Eat nothing made with yeast. Wherever you live, you must eat unleavened bread. Then Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, Go at once to select animals for your families and slaughter the Passover lamb. Take a bunch of hyssop, dip it into blood in the basin, and put some of the blood in the top and on both sides of the doorframe. None of you shall go to the door of your house until morning. When the Lord goes through the land and strikes down the Egyptians, you will see the blood on the tops and the side of the doorframes, and will pass over the doorway and not permit the destroyer to enter your house and strike you down. Obey these instructions as a lasting ordinance for you and your descendants. When you enter the land of the Lord, you will give you as he promised. Observe this ceremony, and when your children ask you, What does this ceremony mean to you? Then tell them, It is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who passed over the houses of Israelites in Egypt and spared our homes when he struck down the Egyptians. Then the people bowed down and worshipped. The Israelites did just as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. At midnight the Lord struck down all firstborn sons in Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on the throne to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and the firstborn of the livestock as well. Pharaoh and all his officials and all of Egypt got up during the night, and there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Up, leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go worship your God as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds, as you have said. Go, and also bless me." The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the country, for otherwise, they said, "we will all die." So the people took their dough, and before the yeast was added, and carried it on their shoulders, and kneading troughs wrapped in clothing. The Israelites did as Moses instructed, and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver, gold, and for clothing. The Lord made the Egyptians favorably disposed towards the people, and they gave them what they asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites journeyed to Ramses to Succoth, where there was about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them, and was also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. With the dough the Israelites had brought with them from Egypt, they baked loaves of unleavened bread. The dough was without yeast because they had been driven out of Egypt and did not have time to prepare food for themselves. Now the length of the time the Israelites people lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to the very day, all the Lord's division left Egypt, because the Lord kept vigil that night, bringing them out of Egypt. On this night, all of the Israelites were going to keep vigil to honor the Lord for generations to come. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "These are the regulations of the Passover meal. No foreigner may eat it. Any slave of you brought it after you have circumcised them, have bought. Any slave you have bought may eat it after you have circumcised them, but a temporary resident or a hired worker may not eat it. It must be eaten inside the house. Take none of the meat outside the house. Do not break any of the bones. The whole community of Israel must celebrate it. A foreigner residing among you who wants to celebrate the Lord's Passover must have all the males in his household circumcised. Then he may take part like the one in the land. No uncircumcised male may eat it. The same law applies both to the native-born and foreigners residing among you." All the Israelites did just as what the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very day the Lord brought the Israelites out of Egypt by their decisions. Dear Lord, thank you for sacrificing your Son, that he's the ultimate Passover lamb, that it's wonderful to read this passage, that you are the protector, and you are the one that guides us out of the land of Egypt, that the Egypt is our sinful nature, and you have broken us free from those chains. So, amen. Thank you. And good night. Sleep well.